Son of a... I'm on a bridleway in Oxfordshire. Yeah, it doesn't quite have the same ring to it as I'm in Patagonia or I'm in Antarctica, but this is where I live. And if I want to keep taking photos more than twice a year when we go on big trips, then I'm going to need to get a bit more used to taking photos in my local area. You sod. For example, a nice bridge like this in the middle of nowhere. Well, there's a house over there. There's a house, sorry, over there. I was just trying to see if I could get in front of it to get like a full circle reflection or, you know, a nice symmetry, but this tree's in the way. Right. Back through the nettles it is. Made it to the spot where we wanted to come today, Waterstock Mill, because apparently it's meant to be a lot of wildlife here, birds, otters, mussels. No, I'm not really going to see pikes and barbels, but what I'd love to see, kingfisher, and whoever Greater Dodder is, no idea who he is. I feel it's time to explore more local areas because what I really need for my photography going forward, or what I think I need at least, is a project. And up until now, I've gone to beautiful places, taken amazing photos, honeypot locations, and it's been real sort of adventure photography, but there's been no real consistency or theme through it apart from that mountain's big or that iceberg's really cool. So I feel like I just need to get out and shoot more, and maybe through the process of doing that, I'll be able to formulate a project idea. I've got lots of project ideas, but not one that I want to stick with just yet. Trying to get down to the river to see if we could see any kingfishers. It's very difficult. I was just staring here for the last 2 minutes and I saw a flash of blue just fly boom that way back down to where we just were at that cottage. I don't know if it was a kingfisher or not, but they're meant to be in the area. I've always wanted to photograph one. Maybe we head back that way and have a look. This isn't a project yet though. Kingfisher isn't a project. It's just a bird. I don't know why they're wearing pacamaks, but they are. Never actually seen a duck's nest before, but I saw something moving high up in a tree and I zoomed in. Turns out it was a duck in this tree, all the way sort of up here. I mean, it makes sense that they nest somewhere and obviously they can fly. But I've just never seen a duck halfway up a tree before. Well, there you go. Learn something new every day. Might have had a few too many Guinnesses last night. Oh well, now I'm on a canal path, again in Oxfordshire. Still thinking about projects. And the first thing about the project, I think it needs to have a decent theme. Something that's vague enough to give me a lot of scope, but not too vague that it doesn't mean anything. And that's quite a subjective thing, I guess. And it's down to me, but yeah, this is the one I'm struggling with the most. The second criteria for this project is that it needs to be something that I enjoy taking photos of. It can't be, I can't force myself to go and do a whole project to take photos of things that I don't find any interest or joy in. Third point is that it needs to be achievable. You know, I do this YouTube and photography stuff part-time. I work a 9 till 5 Monday to Friday, and I get a certain amount of holidays per year. I can't be jetting off on a project to photograph every big mountain on every continent. It has to be something a little bit more local, maybe. Or at least somewhere around the UK. And it has to be something that isn't too ridiculous. I'll have to pick a theme, you know. I couldn't pick something like red boats, because when am I ever going to see red boats? What does that mean to anyone? So at the moment what I'm doing is just going on photo walks around Oxford today. I was around Waterstock yesterday. Tried to see some wildlife. Didn't. Then watched an Attenborough programme, which was literally at that exact same house, and there was otters and kingfishers and ducks and literally everything, but they've got a whole film crew and a year's worth of time and permission to go through all of the places we couldn't go. Maybe something will pop up and go, yeah, that looks like a theme. Maybe I can take more photographs of that. Maybe not. I think it'll just have to evolve over time. Take 10. It's been a couple of weeks since Oxford, and I am back home and starting to think about photography projects again. And I started by having a look at some books that I had on my shelf. So I've got Nigel Danson, Seascapes. I've got Human Nature, James Popsis. Both pretty good themes, actually, for the projects they've done there. They are vague enough to give them a lot of scope, but interesting enough to make a good project, and not too specific either. So they sort of hit that sweet spot. The other 2 points that I made during this video while I was in Oxford was it's got to be something I enjoy and it's got to be achievable. So I have my trusty notes app on my phone, and I've been coming up with some project ideas. I'm going to run through a few of them. City breaks. Pretty cool to do some street photography. It's something I'm sort of getting into at the moment, but it does require a lot of travel, and I don't necessarily have time to do that with a full-time job. I like the human nature part of James Popsis's sort of project, the juxtaposition in human versus nature. And I thought about maybe taking that to a slightly different level, so it's not just human and nature, more photographs of, let's say, a juxtaposition versus a photograph of things in harmony. So that was quite an interesting one. Time of day, I must have been tired when I came up with that one. Reflections, interesting, but not necessarily a project and maybe a bit too specific. I love science, so I've got science in nature, but that's just going to end up being satellite dishes with trees around them. Geometry in nature is an interesting one. It might be more about a sort of macro project, but that could be 90% fractals in patterns. Now, there's 2 that I'm toying with at the moment. Minimalism. I love minimalist photos. I find it really difficult to do them, but it could be an interesting project. And the one I'm sort of settling on, having looked at my Instagram feed over the last couple of years, it's very eclectic in its mix of photography styles, photography types. Therefore, I'm thinking color theory might be an interesting project to do, because there's lots that I can go at there, and it could become a really interesting book as I sort of put together both the photographs and the thinking behind them. Something in photographs of specific colors that work well together. So I'm talking complementary colors, split complementary colors, ugly colors that clash, and taking photographs with colors that clash in them. And there's also maybe like a cinematography side to it as well, where you're trying to convey a feeling with a photograph by using a certain percentage of the frame filled with one color. I think they use it a lot in sort of film and stuff like that, let's say it's 60% sort of dark blue with a little bit of 20% red in there and 20% black, let's say. And that gives a certain sort of feeling to it. And that might be something that's worth investigating. But the upshot of this is I haven't picked one yet. And I think the next stage is maybe thinking color theory could be a project, reviewing my portfolio currently, coming up with what a structure might look like, and maybe I'll take you through the process of how I'm sort of planning it out and putting that sort of project together. So ideally what I want to end up with at the end of this is, let's say, a book or a very long blog. Anyway, color theory, we'll see how it goes. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.